Aaron.
Yeah.
Why didn't you say it the first time I said Aaron?
Because it's pronounced Aaron?
You done messed up, Aaron!
Aaron is right here, everyone. Thanks for joining me. I'm joined by my channel favorite and friend, Captain Tommy Scoville. How's it going, man?
Good. How are you doing?
Doing great. Before we get started, let me just remind everybody about your awesome YouTube channel, The Lifeboat, the story of how a convicted bank robber and addict came out of prison to changed man with a dream. This is how Captain Tommy started The Lifeboat. So check that out, guys, if you're interested in that content. Tommy, we got so much to discuss.
Right?
So, I mean, you were the first person to point out to me the significance of Danny Masterson refusing to cooperate with the pre-sentencing investigation, the pre-sentencing report, and exactly what that meant. Oh, wait. Let me make sure my mic is plugged in. Oh my God.
Oh, saved. At least we're only a minute in. Oh my God, this happens all the time. And Tommy's mic is working fantastically today.
Perfect. So at least I look like I knew what I was doing. I can't beat that. I've done that so many times. I did. There were days where I used to not read comments, and I probably did about 15 minutes once of just sitting there. And finally, somebody called me on the telephone.
I'd never know if it wasn't for the live chat. So thank you, live chatters, for letting me know. So look, we learned yesterday that Danny Masterson's team has informed the judge that Danny has changed his mind. He is going to cooperate with the pre-sentencing investigation. It's almost like maybe they're watching our videos. You know
I swear to you. I said that on my channel yesterday. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
But here's what's crazy, and here's what I want you to help me and the viewers understand. His team said Danny's going to cooperate with the pre-sentencing investigation. He wants to be interviewed by the parole board or the probation department. I mean, but not about the facts of the case. So what in God's name is Danny Masterson looking to cooperate about, if not about the facts of the case?
Okay. And I think probably a lot of people get tripped up on this because when you hear pre-sentence investigation, it leads you to believe that the bulk of what they're going to be talking about is, what you were convicted of. This is really an opportunity for things other than that. So the judge and the jury and all that's decided, right? So the facts of the case, as far as the pre-sentence investigation team goes, are indisputable. There's undisputable. There's no chance at all for any wiggle room anyway. So the vast majority of what you're going to get in a pre-sentence investigation is, tell me about your youth, right? How old were you the first time you started doing drugs, if you did drugs? When was the first time that something like what just happened? And at that point, the lawyer who will be sitting with him is going to go, don't answer that. And then they're going to move on to the next question. But what they're trying to do is they're trying to paint a picture of who he is, his financial situation. Keep in mind, most people realize that, Danny Masterson can pay the rent, right? But if you think of a pre-sentence investigation in terms of everybody that goes through the door, they don't know who's coming through. So one of the big things is, all right, we want to know how much you make. Give us an idea of your last 4 jobs. How did those jobs end? These kind of things. And even though he's a guy that's famous from Hollywood, they're probably going to ask him all of the same questions anyway, because it's boilerplate. So they're going to bring up his career. They're going to say, how was the career going? And it'll probably be, even with him not answering anything about what happened to the Jane Does and the case, this still will probably take 2 or 3 hours.
Why do they want to know about his jobs and how much he makes?
They're trying to give a picture of who Danny Masterson is as he's walking into prison. And that's every facet of his life. What was your, what's going on in your family with your relationships with all those people? And one of them is going to be, one of the questions is, because I've heard it every time I've had one, is, are you a religious person? Do you have is there a faith that you believe in that governs your life? That's going to be a large question. And it's an opportunity for many inmates. And I was trying to explain this last time somewhat, but this is an opportunity for inmates to work the system. This is their chance to BS a little bit. and to get themselves into position. There are guys that have never had any belief in anything, but they know that 10 to 15 years from now or 20 years from now, people are going to be looking at this. This, as we talked about last time, this follows you through your entire prison rip. So even if he says, I'm not answering any questions about this, they're going to ask about the religion. They're going to ask about whether is there any abuse in your childhood. This is a huge one, because if I'm not giving anybody a pass for anything that they do, right? But if a person was, molested for 9 years, very often it's a behavior that gets translated down because it messes with the psyche. It doesn't happen every time by any stretch, but there are times it becomes cyclical, and it's an opportunity for him to go in and paint a picture of a guy that maybe is just really messed up in the head. And, maybe he can be cured. This is what happened to me when I was younger, kind of a deal. It's also your only shot to go to see psych. If you want to get into a drug program later on, if you didn't talk to psych, you're not getting into a drug program. If you want to get into a program for people, even if you wanted to get into a program for people who did exactly what he did, right? Like an SA program or an SO program for offenders, all of those things benefit you inside the prison walls. But if there's not something on your PSI, they keep going back to that PSI always. I think I need drug treatment. They'll look at you and go, did you talk about that on your PSI? Did you admit that you had a drug problem before you came in? Because it's literally the snapshot of Danny Masterson, the man, as he walks into prison, every facet of his life.
Wow. Is there an incentive for people entering the system for the first time to, during this pre-sentencing investigation, to claim to have alcohol problems or drug problems that they don't really have?
You betcha. And it's going to happen almost all the time, especially if the person has a lawyer, an attorney that is hip in any way, and explains to them really the significance of this investigation. There's a golden opportunity for the person to establish whether or not they're going to get any medication in prison. That snapshot literally is, so if he says, do you have any medical problems? Yeah, I take this for ADHD. I take this because I have anxiety disorder. I take this because, no, more than likely, he's got prescriptions on the street to prove everything he's saying. But without the pre-sentence investigation, it didn't happen. That's where you prove that you're on Xanax, that you're on Adderall, that you're on, sleep medication, whatever it is that you take. And if it is not set up right then and right there, you're not going to be able to, you're going to have a very difficult time in the system getting medications that you need. That said, just because you were on it on the street doesn't mean that you've got carte blanche to take it when you get into the system. If it's something that is wildly abused, they are not going to allow inmates very often to take drugs that are super marketable, right? It's rare. I've seen it, but you got to be very, very seriously messed up psychologically to be put on something like Xanax. And it could be in his best interest, because the people that are given heavy narcotics, right? People who are given literal narcotics very often are separated one rung lower. In other words, you're not just now in a PC unit, which is away from people, but you're also in a PC for people who are on narcotics, because they keep the narcotic people away from people they can sell the narcotics to, if that makes sense.
Oh, wow.
And in a lot of prison facilities, if you take really heavy stuff, they, as an example, when I did time in Nevada, they had one building that was in a different shape than every other one. It was referred to as Pizza Hut. And it's where anybody that was taking those kind of medications were. It would not be a place you'd want to be, because there's a reason they're giving these people medications. These are usually people who are psychotic, people who are on some really, really tough, mental things end up in that facility. It wouldn't be fun. It would be one flew over the cuckoo's nest, for a life sentence, for real.
Wow. Okay. Steve Britton asks this question: can anything Danny says in the pre-sentencing investigation be used against him?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. It more than likely it won't be. I mean, but if you go in there, if you go in and you talk about the fact that you're a Nazi and that you think that, all people whose skin color is not white should probably be taken off the planet, the judge is going to look at that before he decides to sentence you. Right. So people usually try to put their best foot forward. And unlike the average, Joe off the street, I'd be surprised if there wasn't at least 2 attorneys in at his pre-sentence investigation. He's probably going to have the person from the U.S. Marshals, who's the probation department. They're going to be flanked by attorneys, I would imagine, with Danny in there. He's not liable to screw up that way in the PSI. But yeah, you could.
That kind of relates to this question from John Sostovsky. Do you think he will be highly coached on the answers to the standard questions?
Absolutely. The thing is, though, having done 3 of these, there's definitely boilerplate on there. Like, there are questions that they're going to go down, and they're coming. I knew them in the order they were going to come. Like my attorney, this is the person that I ended up marrying afterwards. So I really was spending a lot of time talking to this attorney, and we had come up with a absolute bulletproof plan, and she was going to be sitting in the room with me. And you still get in there, and you have it's a bit of a shocker where it goes sometimes, because they ask a question and I answer it and I go, yeah, and they say, so do you know a girl by the name of such and such? And it's like, I dated this girl in 1987 or something. Like, they went so far back to talk to people about what my possible drug or criminal history was. They're going to hit him with things that are going to absolutely shock him.
Oh, I totally forgot. So as a part of this pre-sentencing investigation, they're not just interviewing Danny. They're going around and they're interviewing like everyone he ever knew, or anybody
that can help them have the best snapshot possible of a guy like Danny, of a guy who's walking in for the first time into prison. Now, he's high profile to beat hell, right? Everybody and their brother knows about this case. When he goes to for his first parole hearing in Xenu willing, 55, 60 years. And he goes to his first parole hearing. There's going to be everything from this PSI is going to be read into the record, right? This follows you for an eternity. So I would imagine that, unlike the average one where the person's done 6 in a day and doesn't much care and it's just getting thrown, I would imagine they're going to put quite a bit of time and effort. This is their chance to grandstand. This is their chance for one of their PSIs to actually be read by people. I would imagine that they are going to have done an amazing amount of research because of the scrutiny that they're going to be under because of this PSI. This isn't just a Joe Blow off the street. This one's famous.
Wow. Okay. Jamie Dodger says, as a Scientologist, isn't Danny automatically good at talking BS? Isn't that bad if people believe said BS? He's still a sex offender, for goodness sake. I got to say, Scientologists might pride themselves on what they believe their communication skills to be. But I would not give Scientologists the credit of just merely being good liars. Like, the planet is full of good liars. And I think I think for people who work for the Office of Special Affairs, there is a specific drill called TRL, that like TR, training routine. L stands for lies, where they practice giving acceptable truths. They essentially practice lying.
Acceptable truths.
Isn't that a good? That's a good word.
Awesome,
right?
Euphemism right there. I like it. That's good stuff.
And I have never even seen any people who work for the Office of Special Affairs doing that drill. But my point is, Scientologists don't actually practice lying. Like, that's not something you practice doing. Not any more than anyone else in the world does. Now, if you're about to sit down and film one of, Scientology's propaganda videos for them, they're probably going to coach you on what to say. You know what I mean? But I'm not going to give Danny Masterson any extra credit for being an extra good BS artist just because he's a Scientologist. He's probably a BS artist for many other reasons.
What, too? Aaron, if we were to take that at face value and say, you know what? Yeah, let's give him a solid 7 on the or an 8 on the ability to BS with the best of them.
Yeah.
You're not going into BS somebody you just met off the street. You're going to sit down with somebody that has done 1,100 of these, right? And every single person they talk to, with very few exceptions, is a professional liar. Like, the people that, when you're a criminal, like, you lie for a living. It doesn't matter what your crime is. Somebody 4 times a week is going to ask you what you do for a living. Once a day, someone's going to say, where have you been for the last 3 hours? I assure you, I know this from experience. If you if you break the law all the time, you lie for a living. It's what you do. And these people are really used to getting BS'd, and they'll call you on it, but they won't do it in front of you. They're not going to say, "Oh, come on, what are you kidding me?" No, they just write that down, and it will be an opinion in the PSI that they don't buy it. So,
oh, that's interesting. They don't even bother calling you out on it.
No, they won't. They're not going to call you out. They're just going to take notes, and they're going to make snap judgments on the spot, which they will recommend to the judge. And they can say to the judge, "We didn't find, not much veracity here," kind of a thing. And this is why they do so much investigation before they come in. One of the intimidating things about the pre-sentence investigation for me was that I never took the stand in my own defense ever. Like, I'm not getting on the stand, and you can avoid that as a person by not taking something. I always take a deal. I never have to testify, right? I never took anything to the box. That never made a whole lot of sense. But doing a PSI is a lot like being on the witness stand, because they're not asking a lot of questions that they don't know the answer to. So when the first question comes off their out of their mouth, and you realize it's in an uncomfortable subject direction, like, why the hell are we talking about somebody that I dated in '87, or why are we talking about somebody, and what they're trying to do is somewhere along the line, that person probably said, "Oh, you know what? Tommy stole something the other night." Like, somewhere there's a record of me saying that I stole something in 1987, and they want you to know that they know how long you've been doing this. If it doesn't even have to be fact. Do you understand what I mean? Like, I didn't get convicted of stealing anything in '87, but if I made a reference to it, this isn't a court of law. People who accused Danny of doing things that they've never seen the inside of a courtroom, all of that can be brought up in this. They can ask him about things that aren't this offense. There are 6 other people who made allegations. You've had allegations made in this state and in that state. Is this and these lawyers are going to jump on him and say, "Don't answer that question." But if this were a normal person, these are the kind of questions that they are going to ask, even knowing that the lawyers are going to shoot him down. Again, if you do these for a living, you're not getting scrutinized a whole lot for what you do. They're phoning it in. They walk in, they go through the list, right? But if you're high profile, or if your crime is going to make the newspaper, right? If you're a bank robber, you're probably going to get, or if the crime was something that made the papers, but this is Danny Masterson. Like, this is, honestly, if you write PSIs for a living, this is your moment in the sun. This is your life's work is going to be right there for people to see.
So you've explained to me how the PSI comes into play later when he first comes up for parole and everything. Does the PSI and anything that gets discussed as a part of it, does that get brought up by the judge at sentencing?
He can reference the PSI at sentencing. Absolutely, he can. And
when you say he, you mean the judge?
The judge, yeah, the judge can. More often than not, the judges. Once again, this is also a chance for any judge to really get their moment in the sun. Right? They talk to people 4 times a day at sentencing, but this is a speech that is going to have been written probably before 4 or 5 different revisions. I would imagine that the judge will.
Now in this case,
right.
There's no cameras in the courtroom. Although I will say that there's going to be a media request. Because the cameras not being in the courtroom is really to protect the Jane Does. But the
Correct.
Jane Does are sick and tired of the media misquoting them. And so there is going to be a request to allow cameras in the courtroom to shoot the Jane Doe's victim statements from the back. So you can't see their faces, but you can hear their voices.
Good.
And so I was going to say the judge isn't going to have an opportunity to make a speech that anyone's going to see or hear, but perhaps actually she just might.
Well, it will also be, when they come into the courtroom and they say, "Okay, we are on the record for the case of Scoville, USA versus Scoville." When they say we are on the record, they literally mean we are on the record. Like, every single word that comes out of anybody's mouth for the rest of the time that they're there will be transcribed. It will be put into, and before Danny Masterson gets to prison, there will be people trying to get on the law library computers and see what the judge said about him at. This will go far and wide. I assure you that everything the judge says at this sentencing will be heard often.
Prisoners it sounds like they can be so damn clever when they got.
Well, they're into it. And even there are times where cases will be sealed for the, what they'll do with the Jane Doe stuff is just redact the crap out of it. So you're not going to see anybody's names or anything else. But let's say that one of the Jane Does was 15. They'd seal up the entire thing. They will actually make it if there's, even if it's just really horrific stuff that they don't ever want anyone to have to endure being leaked to the press. If the examples are just so horrific, or, they very often the judge will just say, we're sealing this. Or if there's a person testifying in there to the, this mob individual told me that he would do this, this, and this, and there were 9 dead bodies. They don't want that getting leaked out either, because it's going to get the person killed. So they will seal the proceedings. However, if you're in prison and the boys look you up and they see that you have a sealed part of your docket sheet, you're as good as far as they're concerned, your paperwork's no good. Now you really would have to be very, very quick on your feet and have an attorney ready to mail in whatever the hell sealed that, because that's considered bad form. Wow. Another prison intricacy that no one needs to know, but it's one of those things. But the most fascinating thing to me is when I saw the first time, and I don't think you were clickbaiting, you're better than that. But when I saw the thing that said Danny cooperates, I thought to myself, from a convict's point, he's turning somebody in. Cooperation to us means, this guy's tossing somebody under the bus to get a little bit less time. There's an interesting chance that this from what I understand, and just it's what you hear, but from what I understand, there are victims in multiple states. Or there are
That's right. There's a victim in New York, for
Correct.
sure. We have victim in Canada, probably more than one, but one that's come forward. I don't remember anything in Florida, but
but now we go from, if that's the case, if you're doing things and you're crossing state lines and everything else, you have a chance of the federal government picking up the case. This is probably one of those situations where if you're Danny Masterson, you're praying that the feds pick up this case. The best thing that could happen to Danny Masterson would be
tell me why
to pick up this case, because the California prison system, when you compare it to the federal prison system, if I had paperwork that was not sparkly clean, if I had Danny's paperwork, I would rather be in the federal system than the state system. Doesn't mean you're going to do soft time. You're still going to get treated like crap. But the level of violence in the state system, in compared to the federal system, there's, one is like is college and one is like 7th grade. The federal system has 3 or 4 prisons that are as nasty as any place you ever want to be. California does too, but California is a state and the federal system is 137 some odd prisons, and there's 3 or 4 you'd really like to not be at. I unfortunately saw a couple of them, but but California is rough wherever you go. It would be far safer for Danny to be in the feds with his crime than it would be for him to be in the state. Now that said, once again, we just saw the other day where old Larry Nassar got perforated like 10 times. That's standard operating procedure, no matter where you're at. But I think he'd be way worse off in California. The California prison system is super, super vicious.
Wow. All right. Care 4JC YT says inmates can be very inventive and make almost any medicine a commodity, such as snorting Wellbutrin, which is no longer prescribed in the CDCR. Wow. What's this talking about?
So Wellbutrin, or Bupurion, is a psych med. It's a med given as an antidepressant. I was about to say it's an SSRI, but it's not. It's that type of a drug. It's a similar. It's prescribed for people for depression, and it's also just prescribed under the name Zyban for people who are trying to quit smoking. But the drug inside Bupurion is when it's crushed up and snorted, it gives you something that I don't know if they planned this because it's really odd, but if you snort it, it gives you a kind of a weak cocaine buzz. You go sort of straight up your high for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then you sort of crash. And and it got very, very popular in all of the prisons across the country. I was in the federal system when they were still prescribing it, and on Saturdays the pill line would go from the medical building all the way to the farthest unit away. I'm not kidding. It's like a football field and a half. And the first day I was there, I was like, "What the hell is this?" And he's like, "Well, during the week they stagger it over 3 hours, but on Saturday you've only got 30 minutes to get your pills, and that's everybody getting Wellbutrin." And I mean, the entire prison was snorting the stuff. And it does give you a cocaine kind of a buzz. It also has the added benefit of feeling you snorted broken glass, which is, always that nice feeling in your nose, like you may have to go to the hospital as soon as you snort it. Wasn't for me at all. Little bit too much of a burn, but I tried it when I was in prison. Everybody did. And he's absolutely right. He or she, I don't know, but they're absolutely right, because the way that some of the drugs in there, you meet a convict and he says, "Hey, I'm selling these." And you go, "What are they?" It's for irritable bowel syndrome. It's a true story. And I said, "Irritable bowel syndrome? No, I'm good, man." He goes, "No, but if you take 15 or 20 of them, right, it literally will become like a hallucinogenic." And I said, yeah, I'm good. And my cellmate said, "Well, no, I'll try them, if they're cheap." And my cellmate was like, I've never seen anything like it in my life. This guy ate 15 pills that were made for irritable bowel syndrome, and for 8 or 10 hours was hallucinating and all kinds of other problems. The what people can figure out how to get high on in prison is it really is staggering. He's right. It's
So
they make stills. They make stills in prison and make moonshine. I mean, if you think about that.
Did that make him shit all over the place, or he couldn't take a shit for 2 weeks?
Yeah, the second actually was the issue. He was a little bound up for a while. It was like eating 6 pounds of cheese.
Oh my God. So someone close to Danny told me that he cannot sleep without sleeping meds, and that might be. This seems like a pretty low tier on the totem pole of reasons to cooperate with a pre-sentencing investigation. But he's probably confronted with this fact that even in his nice home with his nice bed with the blackout curtains, he can't sleep without medication of some kind, and that he's probably completely unable to sleep in prison.
Oh yeah, and I'll tell you something. It's not necessarily one of the smallest reasons. It might be the driving force. If he caught wind of exactly what the PSI does, whether his lawyer finally just was able to get through to him, or he watches his family watches SPTV or whatever the case may be. If he realized the importance of the PSI, this could be the deciding factor for him, because if you can't sleep, number one, it's loud around the clock. It really is. It's loud around the clock in most prisons. There are some that have rules that after 10 o'clock, you're supposed to, quiet down. And in some of the nicer facilities that may actually happen. But I have been in facilities like the level 4 facilities I was at where it was around the clock. It was literally 24 hours a day of people screaming, banging things. Just the noise never stops. And if he really needs sleep meds to go to sleep, my bet would be that he's taken something pretty heavy, and they're not going to give him something pretty heavy in prison. But I guarantee you that his people said to him, "You damn well better have a long list of what you were taking on the street in your PSI, because if it's not in your PSI," and this is a quote in the Fed system anyway, "if it's not in your PSI, it didn't happen." So if you go in and you say to him, you got 2 years left in the federal system, and you say, "I want to take the drug program," and damn well if you finish it, you get a year off your sentence. So you got 2 years left. You do the 1 year, you're going home, and you go in to take the program. And they said, "So what was your drug of choice?" "Heroin." "Excellent. Is that in your PSI?" No, I wasn't honest with them when I first came in." "Well, then it didn't happen." I mean, it's literally that simple. If it's not documented in that this was your chance, and that's why I was saying the last time why he was such a fool to not do this. It doesn't matter whether or not you're trying, you can say, "I'm not going to talk about the case because I honestly didn't do that. But I'm going to let you know exactly who the hell I am, what I've done, how I grew up, like every aspect of my life, because that is super beneficial." And, without that, you're shooting yourself in the foot at probation. And the most important thing is that your medical history is now not your medical history. Your physical files and all of that's all good, but they want you to see at least one psych before you go in. And that psych is going to write up what and as I said the last time we talked about this, Aaron, it's the baseline, right? So if he goes in there and he starts fighting and doing drugs and getting tattooed and all that, and he's dropped below the baseline, well, now you're certainly not, looking like a good candidate for supervised release. If you get in there and this was your baseline determined at the PSI, and now you're in there and you're teaching people, how to read, and you're staying out of trouble, and you've not been in any fights, and your people are coming in and you're worshiping Zimu or whatever you're doing, all of that because they're going to ask about, like, what is your religious, what is your family, what is your, your family ties, all your financial situations. There's like 4 or 5 different things that they're going to ask you every time you have a counselor's meeting, which is like once a year in the feds, where you sit down and they look over your case. You got 9 points added last year for a fight. What was that all about? By the time you leave prison, your file would take up this office. The amount of paperwork that is going to get generated by you because of you. But all of it hinges on this one document that he was going to be refusing to cooperate with. So he wouldn't have gotten any sleeping pills. He's not going to get what he wants either. I promise you he's not. They're not going to give him the stuff he was getting on the street. But he might get trazodone. In rare cases, there are people who can get literally drugs that you would normally say there's no way they're giving that out in prison. Like there are people on barbiturates because the medical need is so great that they can't not give it to them, but they'll separate them. Or if somebody takes OxyContin 80s, in most prison systems, if you're on oxys, they're going to let you take them if you really need them that bad, but you're not going to be in general population. You're going to be in a place completely away. So that, he may have sat down with his attorney, Aaron, this really could be the case where he sat down and said, man, give me something. How can I play this system to make my odds of not getting killed a little better? My family's watching videos. They're freaking out that I'm going to die. What can I do? And they may have said, cooperate with the PSI. Let's get you on a bunch of psych meds where they have to put you in a psych kind of a ward. If you're taking enough psych meds, they're not going to put you in GP. In California, I believe they call it, what do they call it? There's a name for it. Category J. Category J, people can fake category Js, and convicts call them J cats. These are usually guys that are painting on the wall in feces and trying to pretend that they are crazy, because if you're that crazy, they're going to put you somewhere where no one can touch you. And there are people in Danny's shoes who will pretend that, because it's better to play with poop than get stabbed, apparently.
Oh, geez. Okay, so let me ask you this. I know, you talked a lot about bad paperwork in all of our videos, and, ratting on someone is, considered bad paperwork. But how would the inmates treat him cooperating with a criminal investigation into Scientology for something like obstruction?
He has a free pass to do whatever he wants, because he is already the lowest of the low. They're not going to go, and he's a rat. He has got such a messed up crime. If I were Danny, I wouldn't be worried about anything else. You know what I mean? Like nothing he does at this point is going to make him look any worse, unless somebody comes forward that's under the age of 18. Like that's the only way this gets worse for him. But they're not going to go, yeah, and he's ratting on his church too. I don't see them caring too much about that. He is on NC status before he walks in the door. I guess he could be on NC plus, but he's got nothing coming from anybody.
Oh, right. Nothing coming. I forgot. That's what that
nothing
means.
coming.
So interesting. Look, someone, close to the matter who knows more about this than I do said that, so at this late stage, it's not possible for him to cut a deal with the state, but it is possible, I'm told, so I'm not swearing to the accuracy, I'm told, that it is still possible if he were to cooperate with, let's just say theoretically, a federal grand jury into obstruction of justice by Scientology, criminal charges get brought, that if he were to cooperate with criminal prosecution against Scientology, he could trade some state time for some easier federal time. Does that strike you as legit?
There have been people who have made similar deals. I don't know that I've ever seen an SO, someone with his particular brand of crime, that got any kind of love like that. More often than not, you hear about it when it's someone that has, like, they're looking at doing 25 or 30 years in the state for some kind of a crime, and they got an opportunity to get RICO'd. Like the feds will throw a RICO crime on them and pull them out of whatever state facility they're in. People will jump on that. The cop Drew Peterson, right, that I did time with. They pulled him out of the state because he had put so many people in jail that if they put him in the state facility where, you know, every 25 people, there's someone who knows who this cop is. So they pulled him out and stuck him in the feds. What the concept of that is legit, especially if he was doing it against the church, because if there are crimes against the church, chances are it's going to probably raise at some point to the level of the feds. But there is a pretty legitimate possibility if he attacks somebody in New York and he attacks somebody in California, 2 states, I mean, could do it. But you throw in a third, and I'll bet you the feds pick this up. And it would be in his
I don't
best
mean
interest,
federal. I don't mean federal charges against Danny.
You mean federal charges against the church?
Yeah, if Danny cooperated with a federal criminal investigation into Scientology, could he trade some state time for some federal time?
Yeah, absolutely. He could, and they can just do private placement. His attorneys may be trying to work on private placement anyway. If you really have enough cash and you have an attorney and the stars all line up, there are cases where people have said, my client isn't safe where he is. He cannot be in the state system. I don't know that you could sell that on Danny's case. He's just, he's a famous SO, but he's just an SO, right? But
what is private placement? What does that mean?
Private placement means that they take you out of the California system and then they take you to the feds. And the beautiful thing about the feds is because there is a 130 or something prisons in the federal system. Now, he couldn't go to the supermaxes. He couldn't go to but they could take him and drop him in Butner, South Carolina, or maybe it's North Carolina, but they could go put him in Butner and he would survive Butner. They've put some very famous people in there who had some really messed up charges who survived because the whole place is just messed up. It's all people on heavy, heavy meds and people who did really, really disgusting crimes. But yeah, if I were Danny, I would be talking to my attorneys about that. I'd say, boy, I guarantee you I can give you dirt on Scientology. The question would become, when that happens, your lawyer friend could tell you better than this. There's a letter that they would have to write ahead of time. And I think it's called it starts with a P, but there's a word, proffer. You proffer to the federal government or to the state what you can do for them. So Danny would have his attorney write up and say, here's the dirt that we could give you on Scientology. And they're not going to talk to you about a deal until you say, here's everything I got. You put it all out on the table. It's not like you see in the movies where the guy says, you get me a guarantee of for 4 years and I'll tell you everything you want to know. And they say, well, I'll go get that approved. It doesn't. That's not how it goes down. My wife did tons. My ex-wife did tons of these cases, and she would be typing up proffers and she'd say, you literally have to give them every single thing that the person knows. And then they can say, yeah, all right, we'll cut a deal. You tell us everything. All right, we'll give you 2 years off of your sentence. Or we'll give you a year off your sentence. You hear these horror stories of people that, they testify against 25 people and they end up doing one less year.
I got to tell you, the more time goes on, the more I think Danny's going to realize he has nothing to win by protecting Scientology. He has
no other card to play.
Right.
Honestly, what's Danny's play right now? He could start to try to paint the Mona Lisa on the wall of his cell, or he could try to figure out a way to get out of the California system. I think his play is to do anything within his power to make sure he is protected.
Yeah.
If he wants to hold on to this body, maybe he's over it.
John Sostovsky says, did I hear correctly? Married an attorney? That's a show by itself.
Yeah, you don't want to hear that show.
So
I didn't say we're still married. I said I married her. We're not.
So you married your attorney?
I did. I married my defense attorney.
Holy shit.
Yeah, that pretty much sums that up.
All right. Andy Fabulous says he may be working out a deal where if he helps the DA with GJI, what is that? I don't know what that is. Do you know what that is? GJI?
No.
Okay. If he helps. Okay, he won't get sent to max security prison, or maybe he'll get concurrent sentences rather than consecutive or immunity from federal prosecution. All right, Andy, I'm not totally clear on this, but I will say this: this issue, this question comes up all the time. Is it possible the judge? Is it possible the judge can sentence him to the 2 15-year sentences concurrently? And I can tell you that people in the district attorney's office have said, to the best of their knowledge, that's not even an option. I think they do expect Danny's team to make an argument for that, because a few years ago there was some case where the sentence was supposed to be concurrent. I'm sorry, concurrent. Consecutive means one after the other. It was supposed to be consecutive, and they made an exception. They made it concurrent because both charges were for the same victim. In Danny's case, it's multiple victims. There's pretty much a 0% chance that it's going to be served concurrently.
Yeah, different victims, different nights, different places. It's definitely two separate crimes. They tend to run those, as the convicts say, they tend to run those bow-legged.
Right. All right, let's see. So Pete Jensen says, I had a pre-sentencing investigation at probation department on a felony. I think that's what that says, right?
Yeah.
Didn't go as in depth. So they didn't talk to family members, or they talked, I don't know, talking to family members, but did drug and violence history. Judges usually follow the PSI report to the T.
The PSI report is like the final part of a puzzle that they do follow to a T. He's right. So this will be, the judge is going to know pretty much, like in the feds, they recommended what my sentence would be. You get to the very end of the PSI and they say, all right, after everything we looked over, Tommy should get X number of months. And that's their recommendation. And they give the judge, so they give him 90 to 120 months. So he's got that to play with. When this PSI is over, they're going to give the judge their recommendation from parole. And it's going to be 30 years on the low end, and it's going to be probably 60 or 70 on the high end. The fact that there was the use of a firearm is an issue, man. Like, that's a really serious issue. And I don't think that's not something that they're just going to go, well, you used the gun in one of them, no big deal. Like, that's a really huge deal. And that's that's going to get him more time.
Right. Okay. Evelyn says GJI stands for Grand Jury Inquiry or Grand Jury Investigation. Okay. So let's go back to Andy's comment.
Do you feel dumb? Because now I do.
He may be working out a deal where if he helps the DA with the grand jury investigation, he won't get sent to max. So this is actually really interesting, because we already know, and it's crazy that we already know this, Deputy DA Reinhold Mueller, the guy who led the prosecution against Danny, is the same guy who's running the grand jury investigation into Scientology's obstruction. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
Yeah, but you said it wrong.
What did it say? What did it say?
Reinhold
Mueller.
There you go. See, I was getting used to that. I was getting used to it.
And so
that's actually really that actually is a really, really interesting thought, and it could be very, very legit. He could be cooperating with the on the grand jury investigation for anything he can get. Those aren't bad options. Not getting sent to a level 4 yard. I honestly, if I were his attorney, I don't know what a level 4 dropout yard is like. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to be in a prison that. He's going to be in a maximum security prison for other people with who have dropped out of gangs that are right. It's going to be that would be a good deal for him. If he could get one level of custody dropped, what it would do for his security would be a pretty big jump.
Okay, let's take a look at this comment, because Russ is someone who's in touch with me a lot, and he's given me a lot of good feedback on this prison stuff, like you have. So Russ Hampton, Danny can only get state time. The judge can't sentence him to Fed time. Oh, no, that's true. I understand that. unless another federal judge sentences him to a Fed case. So here's the thing. The person who came to me with this information, who, by the way, is someone that's close to the case, who said this concept of switching state time for Fed time. And I responded the same way. I said, look, these are two separate things. They're two different worlds. They exist independently of each other. And the explanation still came back to me like, yes, I understand what you're saying, but this is something that can happen. Now here's where it gets difficult talking about even with lawyers, even with, former inmates and everything. Even I could bring on 3 different former DAs to discuss this. They're all going to tell me something different.
Absolutely. Same with 4 different people that have been to prison, because these are pretty nuanced things. What he said is absolutely right. The judge only has the ability to work within this case. But there are other things that are out there right now that very much have a federal flair to them. And if he gets charged again, it very well could be as a Fed. But what Aaron was saying was there are people who have cut deals to protect themselves where they just get placed into the federal system. And that could be something that if he said, I'll cooperate with the grand jury, I don't want to do my time in California. I would like to go and drop me in some, lower security federal system somewhere on the East Coast, maybe give me a different name. I mean, honestly, there have been deals made in the past you wouldn't believe. There are definitely people that get, like I told you about the cheese factory, right? You go into the cheese factory and there are 130 cells in there and there's only 2 names, right? Everybody in there is either a Smith or a Jones because there's nobody in there that's in there under their real name, but Sammy the Bull was there. The cheese factory had a lot of very famous inmates over the years. But there really are a bunch of things that could happen, like you're talking about the possibilities thereof. I think that unless the feds really think Danny's got something, like his proffer letter would have to be pretty amazing. I don't know what he could give him on Scientology that would be that huge. I mean, I don't know enough about it. Maybe he's
just
really,
the obstruction. It's just the obstruction. The obstruction of justice in the Danny Masterson case. For example, he could say Scientology paid the attorney's bills for the lawyer that was representing me that threatened the Jane Does into this settlement and non-disclosure, and that Scientology paid those bills, not me.
Oh wow, yeah.
Just for example.
Yeah, that would actually be pretty epic, and he probably could get some juice for that. I mean, he certainly. I don't want anyone to worry about it. Danny's never going to cut a deal that's going to get him a crap load of time off his sentence. They don't do that for people with this kind of crime. And when people say, well, he could, if he were to do this, this, or this, he had 3 years, 4 years to do exactly that. You know what I mean? Like Danny's play should have been from Jump Street. Boy, do I know some things. I mean, if there was something he could have done, he should have done that before that gavel got slammed down. Because if he thinks that, honestly, money, it would take 4 kinds of miracles for that guy to even lessen the sentence. But he's never walking out.
Right. Okay, we got an important one here. Lulu92 says, Tommy, one of the 10 internet commandments is thou shalt show the cat.
Well, if you've never been to the lifeboat, I always end with the cat. It's the cat in the basket. I always promise 2 things on the lifeboat. We judge nobody, and we are the nation's largest purveyor of cat in the basket. That's Squirrel. She's in the basket for every show. She never leaves. She's actually handcuffed to the bottom of it. But I did it kindly. She's in there. You good kitty. Sorry.
Oh, that is amazing. All right. Well, this has been awesome. I can't believe it's been 48 minutes. It feels like it's been 20 minutes. My goodness.
This is going to be really interesting to see this one play out.
Yeah.
And the nice thing is that someday, say, I don't know, 3-4 months from now, we can sit and read this PSI.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like we can pull this right off of there. It's going to be interesting to hear what they asked and what he answered. It's public record.
Yeah. Okay. We got one more question here. Will Judge Almeida be the one heading up the Danny Masterson case post-sentencing, or will a judge take it over? Why would there be anything post-sentencing? I'm confused.
If anything that happens post-conviction is going to go, you know, that you put in an appeal, you do all of those things. That first level could be the judge, but then it's going to end up in the state courts and then in the federal courts if they go high enough. So very, very little will the judge have to do with this after the sentencing.
Right. Goldie's asking, the PSI is public? I was wondering the same thing.
Yeah, you can get access to people's PSIs. Unless there are things in there that are sealed, you absolutely can. At least in the federal system, you can. I know for a fact because I read the ones of the people that testified against me.
Guys, if you're one of the 2,200 people watching live, do us a favor, please. If you can, hit that like button. It actually does help, believe it or not. I want to remind everybody of Tommy's fantastic YouTube channel called The Life Boat, the story of how a convicted bank robber and addict came out of prison a changed man with a dream. This is how Captain Tommy started the lifeboat. So check that out, you guys.
And you get cat in a basket.
And you get cat in a basket. You can't beat that.
Where do you find that?
All right, well, let's do this again soon. So much to talk about on this case, and love talking with you every single time. It's awesome.
You know what? I have a great time every time I come on here. I really do. You got such a great crew. Alrighty.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks to everybody who watches until the very end. We'll talk to you guys soon.
All right.
If you want to see my rock and roll songs, click right on this guitar. And if you want to see a different one of my videos, then you could click right inside here. If you have subscribed or not, subscribe right here. Bye.